Hello, I hope you are having a wonderful day. Today, I want to talk about creating mood, tone, and atmosphere in your story. So, if you recall a little refresher, the mood is the feeling created in the reader. So, it's the feeling you want your reader to have while they are reading your story. The tone is the attitude of the author or the narrator. Um, in this case, since it's fiction, it'll probably be narrator, so the speaker. And the atmosphere is the overall feeling created by the mood and the tone together. So there are quite a few ways that you can influence the mood, tone, and atmosphere of your story that I want to show you today. So the first one is with your word choice. Word choice is quite simply the words that you use in your writing. You can use different words to create different feelings. So, for example, if I say, the room was dark and cozy. Anna was curled up under a blanket. She was too warm and comfortable to even dream of getting up. That gives you one kind of feeling, right? Like that feels very cozy. She doesn't want to get out of bed because it's nice and warm. But I could also write, the room was dark and still. Anna was hidden under a blanket. The world outside her bed was too cold and empty for her to face right now. That gives a much different feeling, right? Like, I don't feel happy reading that. I feel much more withdrawn, and it feels much more like something sad is coming or something worrying. Or we could say something like, the room was dark and quiet. Anna reached for the blanket above her, tugging it off her face. Her lips curled into a smile as she took a deep breath. Today was finally the day she'd been waiting for. So that sounds even more happy than this first one, where she's kind of like reluctant to get out of bed. Like maybe it's just like a winter morning and her alarm went off. She doesn't really want to get up because it's nice and cozy, but she has to. This one is more like something really sad's going to happen. And this one, like, she's really excited. So you can kind of see that the same thing is happening. Anna is waking up, the room is dark. She's not getting out of bed. But it feels totally different depending on what words I use. So you want to be careful with the words that you choose to use because they will give different feelings to your writing. Another thing to think about is the rhythm of your writing. The rhythm is like the flow and the pace of your sentences. So, for example, shorter sentences may feel more urgent or more excited, whereas longer sentences may feel a little bit more melancholy, depending on, again, the word choice. All of these things work together. So, for example, Shelley sat up. Today was the day she could hardly breathe. That sounds kind of breathless, kind of like excited, right? But you could also say, Shelley sat up and stared at the dusty room around her. She took in a deep breath and sighed. Today was the day. And that sounds totally different, right? So the rhythm, the length of the sentences, and of course the word choice, the dusty room, she's sighing, those help us see that there's a different feeling there. We can also look at the figurative language in a story. So we want to think about figurative language. Figurative language is any language that is intended to create an image, association, or other effect in the mind of your reader that goes beyond the literal meaning or expected use of the words involved. So if you make a comparison, like a metaphor or a simile, if you use personification where you kind of give an animal or an inanimate object human characteristics, if you use hyperbole, which is an exaggeration, allusion, where you kind of reference something else, an idiom, pun, onomatopoeia, which is sound words, alliteration, where you use the first letter sound repeatedly, those kinds of things. If you use those in your writing, the ways that you use those, the images or associations or effect you're going for, can change the mood. So I did some similes. So for instance, if I said the knife on the counter glistened like morning dew on green grass, that's like a nice, lovely metaphor. Oh yay, green grass. However, if I said the knife on the counter glistened like freshly spilled blood, That feels a lot different, right? The thing I decide to compare it to can feel really different. If I want to kind of go off the wall, I could say something like, the knife on the counter glistened like those plastic teeth that wind up and go chattering around on the floor. That one's sort of weird. With your similes, you can get kind of funky, depending on what you're going for, what kind of mood you're trying to create. If you want things to be spooky and creepy, you want to stay in spooky and creepy metaphors and similes. Same thing with all of these. You kind of want to use them to your advantage, obviously. So you want to think about like what would make the atmosphere feel the way you want it to feel. And lastly, we can think about the description that we can use. So description, obviously we talked about our word choice, and that is still very important. But you can also think about like what you're actually choosing to describe. So choosing to focus on certain things is going to change the mood, tone, and atmosphere of the scene. So, for example, if I write, the room Harry entered was dimly lit, bookshelves covered every wall, and the floor was strewn with long-abandoned boxes. That's sort of, that's not a super strong mood, but we can kind of picture it. It's pretty normal. If, however, I focused on something else and I said, the room Harry entered was dimly lit, crowded on the floor were the moldering remains of several dozen musty, reeking boxes, then that's a different room, right? Like, the first room, it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, there are bookshelves on the wall and there are some boxes. This is, like, gross. I don't want to go in that room. The boxes are moldering. And they smell bad. So that gives me a totally different sense of what's happening. I could also say something like, the room Harry entered was dimly lit. Long-abandoned boxes were strewn around the floor. As Harry looked, he thought he saw what appeared to be a golden monkey statue sticking out of one of the boxes. So again, that sort of changes our atmosphere. We feel a little bit different about the scene if we notice a random golden monkey statue than if we notice the reeking boxes or the bookshelves. So as you are writing, really think about creating mood, tone, and atmosphere. Think about your word choice. Think about the rhythm of your writing. Think about figurative language. And think about your description. Try a few different things while you write. Don't just go with the first thing that you think of. Try a couple things and see if you can fit more of the mood, tone, and atmosphere that you are going for. Remember that the mood and the tone do not have to be the same thing. Your character can have a really positive outlook or really positive attitude, but the mood of the scene can still be foreboding if something kind of bad is going to happen. Or your character can have a really negative attitude and the scene can be pretty happy, and that can kind of clash, creating sort of a confused kind of atmosphere. So just keep that in mind, that they don't necessarily have to be the same, although they can be. So really, really focus on mood, tone, and atmosphere in your writing today. Have a wonderful day. I will